All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to open the meeting for the Transportation Advisory Committee for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government. It is 1:30 on October 17th. So as I've called this meeting to order, I want to go around the room and start with introductions, and then I will be asking Jerry to help me with some of the online folks that are participating today. So to kick us off, my name is Gail Sturdivant. I'm City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Colorado Springs. Going to my right.
Hi, I'm Allison Burns. I'm the Grants Analyst with MMT.
Hello, everybody. Jacob Matson. I'm the Planning Supervisor with MMT.
Hello, Jeff Guthrie, CDOT Region 2 Planning Supervisor.
Good afternoon, everyone. CDOT, Lindsay Hawkes, CDOT Region 2 Planning.
Aaron Horstmeyer, Community Planner, Ash Reaver Space Force Base.
John Lee Settles, PPACG.
Janelle Miller, PPACG. Jess Bechtel, PPACG.
Okay, great. Online, actually, I think I can't see them. So Andrew.
Andrew, City of Manitou Springs, City Engineer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Aaron.
Hi, this is Aaron Busto with Federal Highways.
Great. Dan.
Yeah, that's mine.
Do you recognize?
Monument.
Okay.
Monument Dan, are you there?
Oh, he's on mute.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to Dan.
Couldn't hear me?
No, we can't. We could not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Ungerleider. I'm the Town of Monument Planning Director.
Thank you, Dan. Isin, I don't know that I pronounced that correctly. Or Aslan. Sorry, and I also.
Yep, I think that's correct. Hi, everyone. Aslan Drosky with the FTA.
Great, thank you. George.
Hi there, George Gronke, Transit Planner with DTR. CDOT's Division of Transit and Rail.
Okay, great. Thank you, George. Jason.
Good afternoon, Jason O'Brien, Transportation Planner, PPACG.
Great, thanks, Jason. Lachelle.
Hello, Lachelle Davis, CDOT Region 2 Local Agency.
Okay, great. Scott.
Hi, Scott Skinner, Region 2 Transit Liaison.
Okay, great. Victoria.
Victoria Chavez, El Paso County.
Okay, Jared, can you help me see if there's somebody below on the list below Victoria?
That Victoria was the end.
And did anyone else join us? I don't believe so.
I believe you caught them all as they were coming in.
Okay,
so
great.
Kudos to you.
It's probably the best job I've ever done at that. I do want to point out that Lan is not able to join us today, so her alternative is Allison, so she'll be voting on behalf of MMT. And then Victoria, do you have anyone for your second slot today filling in?
If Mazador is not on the line, then no, I do not.
Okay, great. Thanks, Victoria. Appreciate that. I still believe that we have a quorum, though, from what I saw in the roll call. Is that correct? All right. So now that we've called the meeting to order, establish our quorum with introductions, I'm going to be seeking approval of the agenda. It was published in your packet. Hopefully everyone had a chance to take a look at it, and if so, I'd be looking for a motion.
That's the lack of a motion. I'll motion. This is Allison.
All right, Allison, thank you. She's put a motion forward to approve the agenda. Stand by, everyone. One moment. So Allison, may I recommend propose a friendly amendment that we move Shane Ferguson up to between items 5 and 6?
I think that's great. I'll motion the amendment.
Okay. I will be looking for a second for this motion for the agenda, which, just to be clear, we're going to be moving up 7B to be heard after item 5.
Gail, it's Victoria. I will second the motion with that amendment.
Great, thank you. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, we've got an agenda. Moving on. I'm going to open it up for public comments for items that are not on the agenda. I'm going to be looking to Jared to see if anyone signed up either in person or online to speak.
So Madam Chair, we did not have anyone sign up in person or online to speak.
Great, thank you, appreciate that. We're going to move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Hopefully everyone had the opportunity to look at the minutes. And if you have any corrections, please bring those to my attention. Otherwise, I'll be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as published.
Victoria, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Victoria. Do I hear a second from anyone?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That was a really light aye. I assume that if I didn't hear any nays, that those minutes are approved as published. I'm going to move on to item 5, the Board of Directors report.
Yes, the only transportation related item that the board heard this month was the amendment number 1 to the FY 25-29 TIP, which was adopted. And I think that's it for this month.
And we did give them an update on the long range plan.
We did give them yes, we did give them a short update on the long range plan during the executive director report.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for the PPACG staff? All right, so this is where we come to the adjustment in our agenda. So we agreed that we would hear item 7B. So see that, staff. James?
All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time to speak about this. This is a follow-up on discussion of CDOT Region 2 RPP discussion. I believe that was introduced the last TAC meeting. The proposal that we would like to move forward with respect to CDOT's RPP is typically Region 2 as a whole, which is the southeast quadrant in the state. We have 14 counties, 5 planning areas, of which PPACG obviously is one of them. We receive about $9.5 million annually of RPP. That is Regional Priority Programming funding, which is our most flexible funding that we have across all of our funding categories. What my recommendation or my request is that beginning fiscal year 29, CDOT would retain in a pool 1.5, approximately 1.5 of that 9.5 million. The remaining 8 million would be distributed just as it is currently, utilizing the RPP formula. So what does that mean for PPACG? Well, currently PPACG receives about $3.895 million with the current formula, and the adjustment would reduce that to about $3.28 million for PPACG. We would be retaining about $615,000 as part of that 1.5 million pool annually. The reason that we are requesting this is, again, I refer to the idea that RPP is our most flexible funding. You know, we have HSIP, faster, we have service treatment, we have all these other boxes, if you will, of funding that are very specific to treat very certain treatments or safety issues. But when it comes to things that pop up, and I'll give an example on Highway 105, where we are addressing drainage, French drain or drainage across the highway with a natural spring, it doesn't fit within all the different categories that we have. Or I'll give an example out west, where we have some challenges on State Highway 9 with sloughing off the road and geotechnical challenges. These are not maintenance problems. They're outside the scope of our maintenance team, but yet they're small and quick hit things that need to be addressed immediately. Another example is on Powers Corridor, where we have undercutting of a culvert currently, where at Grinnell, we're to utilize RPP to get a contractor under contract quickly through emergency funds, with the idea that we would utilize the RPP to get the contract under contract, but then go back to Transportation Commission, consider it's an emergency, and ask for a backfill of TC contingency funds to backfill that RPP pot. Another idea or another area that we would be able to utilize this funding is more times than not, we see projects that come in over advertised, over budget, but yet bringing the funding in to make the project move forward can be challenging when we've already capped out on a lot of our funding resources. And so RPP is, again, a flexible funding portion that would allow us to make projects move forward and bring projects from advertisement to award. And so past couple of years, we've had a contingency pot from federal redistribution that addressed overruns on our advertised projects. I believe Region 2 received, you have to help me, around $5 to $6 million, which I say 95% of that was actually utilized here in Pikes Peak area. On Fillmore to Garland Gods is one project that was utilized. Another one's Airport and Powers. And so that pot itself is exhausted. And so we're looking for areas where we can have flexible funding to address project overruns, emergency projects, things that are outside the scope of a normal project and outside the normal skill set or the scope of our maintenance team. So we are not the only ones that do this. Region 4 currently utilizes a very similar plan. They receive about $11 million annually. They retain $2 million in a regional pot, if you will, and utilize it for very similar efforts. Just to give you an example of how other regions handle their RPP, Region 5, which is, let me back up, Region 4 is the northeast quadrant of the state. Region 5, which is the southeast quadrant of the state, I believe they receive around $3.5 million that actually retain all of their funding and do not distribute it out to the other planning areas and utilize it for project overruns. I believe Region 3 currently utilizes it in a very similar manner that we do currently with the RPP distribution to their planning areas. And then Region 1 is pretty unique. They only have DRCOG, and so it's just a little bit of a different situation for Region 1. So all that being said, again, this is a mechanism, a tool for us to address challenges and problems that we're having on our highways where they does not fit within our current parameters of funding definitions. That being said, again, RPP was historically identified as a flexible funding source for that reason. So my request is beginning fiscal year 29 is to start retaining about 1.5 million. We would distribute the remaining 8 million as we do today, utilizing that RPP formula. And the way I would approach this is a request that let me back up. One of the comments received as we've been discussing this with areas is a request to look at it in just a period of time. And I believe that's a great idea considering our next 10-year plan cycle's coming up. I believe fiscal year 29 is in the middle of that 10-year plan cycle. And so I'd request that we at least start to look at that and for a two-year period, looking at fiscal year 29 to fiscal year 30 and see how that works out for the planning areas. Another component that I'd commit to you on is quarterly, we would report out, how we spent this pool of funding. And just as transparency, because that's definitely a part of that we want to continue with is how we spend that funding. And so we would report back quarterly to the planning areas, just on a quick memo. This is the funding that we received, and this is the funding that has been spent, whether it's in El Paso County or Baca County or Pueblo County, where it may be, we would report that out as for how that funding has been spent. It's been talked a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and just open it up to questions at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Gail Sutter with City College Fund. So let me just start. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I feel like you've done a great job really explaining to us the need to have this flexible contingency pot of money to address small unexpected projects that don't necessarily fit in your typical funding sources, one, or may need immediate funding just based on the nature of it. So I think that this really answered a lot of questions that I heard at the TAC meeting last month. I do want to open it up for others to see if there's other questions or comments for Shane. Anything else? All right. So this was an informational item. So understand as we go into the 10-year plan, I think that the fact that you couldn't explain really the intent and the purpose, and I think it makes a lot of sense when you see that. I think that the TAC could be able to get behind that very easily. So thank you again for taking the time and joining us today.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. I think our next steps, we will continue to have these conversations. I believe our next still EPR for approval of fiscal year.
Likely.
So the where you would see this when it's all said and done would definitely be in the joint TPR meeting. I believe that's early February is what I've heard. So, but between now and then, obviously, if there are questions, I'm more than willing to come back and have this discussion.
Great. Thank you. So let's make sure on the minutes that we've had a discussion about this, since we will have new leadership at the TAC in February, that just would note that we've had a thorough discussion and explanation by CDOT on this item. So hopefully it will be a simple thing once we get to that 10-year planning item. Yes, John.
Yeah, and I think it, and again, I don't know how you want to handle this, Shane, but I think it's important to mention that, again, this is money for a whole bunch of the different regions. So this is not something PPACG quote unquote votes on. This is your decision. And so it's great that you've come in and asked for input. But at the end of the day, just like we wouldn't want Pueblo to vote on it, yes or no, and then we have to live at that decision, the rest of the 16 counties wouldn't want to live with whatever we did. So
Understood. Again, the intent here is transparency. Like, the intent here is to definitely receive conversation and input. It's from my perspective, it is a way of addressing a challenge and a problem. And you are correct. I'm not looking for a yes, no, et cetera. This is be reflected on our RPP plan beginning fiscal year 29. I appreciate the conversation and definitely would continue to welcome any sort of comments or questions that you guys may have. But that's all transparency. That's the approach I would like to take.
yeah, thanks. And again, I think it's great that you've done that and had this very open, transparent thing. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear. This is an information item. He is providing information and asking and soliciting your input. But at the end of the day, I don't want anyone to think, hey, wait, why isn't this coming back in a later month? It is not coming back in a later month. Time to give input to Shane is now, but once the 10-year plan gets constructed based on that budget, those funds are there. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that added comment. I also just want to point out that Becky Frank was able to join us along with John Hall and Kathleen Collins from CDOT. So we definitely have more. So any other questions for Shane? Otherwise, we'll let him continue. Thank you, Shane. I know this is a very busy day for you with Transportation Commission, so we appreciate you juggling to be able to be available today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We're going to move back on to the regular flow of the agenda and move on to item 6A. So, Danelle.
Yes, so this is the Amendment 1 to our Unified Planning Work Program. And we had brought this to you previously as a draft document, and we're able to release it to the board or to release it for public comment. We did receive a couple of comments to the UPWP that are reflected in the appendix. However, there were no comments that required changes to the actual document. I will note that there were a few changes made to the UPWP itself, specifically the wording related to the CDOT funding that has kind of replaced some of our local funding for FY25. This was done in response to some questions from FHWA and making sure that we had proper clarity there. So today we are really looking to get a recommendation to the Board of Directors to approve this UPWP amendment. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Danelle. Any questions for her? We've seen this item once or twice in leading up to this point, so hopefully there's no questions. So unless anyone wants to add something or ask Danelle a question, I'd be looking for a motion to recommend this amendment for adoption.
This is Allison. I'll go ahead and recommend that motion.
Great, thank you, Allison. Anyone willing to give me a second?
Victoria, I'll second.
Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second to recommend approval of this amendment to the UPWP. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, you have a recommendation to
Thank
take
you.
that to the board. All right, we're going to move on to item 6B, the active transportation plan. Jason?
Okay. Apologies for not being there in person. I'm a little under the weather, so excuse me if I cough a couple of times as I talk here. So a little bit of background. Last month, we asked for a formal recommendation of the active transportation plan, gave a little presentation on the very summary of the process and the main deliverables. No presentation this time, although I have a few slides for reference if they're needed, if anybody wants to see any of that again. The TAC chose to postpone that recommendation. To clarify, there didn't seem to be any actual issues or problems with the content of the plan, just a question of procedure. So the TAC wasn't provided with the most up-to-date draft to review. And that's partly because it was thought by the project team that the updates that weren't reflected were not really substantive changes. So that was the thought process behind that. But it was pointed out to us at TAC that there is a lot of interest in this project and that some TAC members are being asked about it quite a bit. So then the thought was to get the latest draft just to be on the safe side, and that makes sense. So the draft provided for review this time in your packets does contain all the updates. And for convenience, I've got a little slide on that, if I can share the screen real quick.
I think Jared is going to make that happen for you, but while he's doing that, I will tell you my recollection wasn't that it was not the latest draft. My issue was that the public comment period was not ended, and we were still anticipating receiving comments and having that incorporated in the document.
I recall that happening in the past, but the public comment period was concluded before we went to TAC last month and sought the recommendation. And the comments were summarized and discussed. So I think we're okay.
So my apologies if that's the case, Jason.
That's okay.
I will tell you that's where I went back and focused when I was looking at the draft.
Yeah, that's perfectly okay. No, we just needed to clean up a procedural boo-boo.
Okay.
So working on that screen share, and if I can't get it to come up, I can just talk through it. There were two changes. The first is that in the plan there's some language that suggests certain trail surfaces for certain trail cross sections and certain locations like urban versus rural. And what was changed there is we just added some language that recommends also weighing the cost of maintenance and repair when considering trail surfaces. So we were asked by stakeholders to add that. And we thought it made sense. Bearing in mind that none of this is really binding. You know, this plan does not constrain our member jurisdictions from building what trails they wish. But it was just, we thought it was a smarter recommendation. So we went ahead and added that. And then there's a table that gives some guidance on possible funding sources and funding mechanisms for active transportation type projects. And we just added some detail to that table with the help of our PPACG grants coordinator, just to make it a little bit more helpful. So those were really the only changes. I just wanted to go through that in case you didn't feel like hunting through the document for what was different. We did have a great process with, I would say, more than the usual amount of stakeholder input. And I did want to give a special shout out to El Paso County Parks in particular. They were a great steady partner on this throughout the project. They help with accuracy, trail construction knowledge, local conditions, and other things. So really appreciate that. We did get input from all of our member governments in the MPO area, in many cases talking with them 2 or 3 or more times as their availability allowed. Also talked with a lot of other folks, but I don't want to rehash everything we talked about last month. I'm happy to answer any questions, but since I don't recall any other outstanding issues to address, I would like to ask if the TAC would consider a formal recommendation of the active transportation plan.
All right, great. Any questions, discussion, or motion on this item? I found it very interesting as I went through the public comment that the pros and the cons were a true dichotomy of each other.
They were, yeah, there's a lot of, people always have strong opinions when it comes to active transportation planning. We always get plenty of input.
All right. Any other questions, comments, or a motion? So folks, this is an item that we do need to take action on, and we are looking for a motion on either to recommend approval or give some direction to the team before they go to the PPACG board.
Victoria, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Victoria. Can I get a second from someone?
This is Allison. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and second. All in favor of recommending approval of taking this to the board, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, Jason, thank you to you and your team, and thank you for taking this extra month to button this up for us, and we really appreciate this. All right, we're going to move on. All right, we're going to move on to item 7A, CDOT Transit Connection Study. And George, I believe this is you.
Hi there. Yep, this is me. Hello, everyone. I'm George Gronke. I'm a transit planner with CDOT's Division of Transit and Rail. And just wanted to thank you all for your time today, and just also especially thank the folks with PPACG and Mountain Metro that reached out to me and got me here on the schedule today. And today I'm presenting on the Transit Connection Study. I'm providing you all with an update on what we're doing with this internal study. Next slide, please. So to start things off, I think a lot of folks are aware, but I always like to have this slide up. So what DTR is and its role in CDOT. So CDOT's Division of Transit and Rail is responsible for planning, development, operation, and integration of transit and rail into the statewide transportation system. We're currently organized into 3 groups. So transit planning and operation. So this includes busing family services, transit planning, which is the team I'm on, and then transit project delivery and oversight, our transit programs team. So those folks who are administering, overseeing FTA and state transit funds to transit providers, and our passenger rail team, with the big efforts being the Front Range Passenger Rail, the Mountain Rail, and then their ongoing efforts around the state rail plan. Next slide, please. And then additionally, before getting into some of the study elements, I think, starting with some of our kind of where we started our rationale for doing this internal study and where we're going with it. And so really highlighting, 2 of the things that we do here at DTR in those teams. And so one of those being, of course, the Bustang Family Services. And so this map showing the services and where they go. I'm sure a lot of folks are aware of. And then next slide, please. And then passenger rail. Here, of course, on the left side of the screen is Mountain Rail and the anticipated corridor for that project. And then the Front Range Passenger Rail, as those planning efforts are underway and that project continues to move forward. And so in taking kind of these ongoing efforts and the existence of the busing family services, there was some motivation to move forward with a study that evaluated the existing state of transit throughout the state and these upcoming efforts we have at the state level, and how best to integrate and connect those systems, which will bring me to my next slide, which is the transit connection study and the purpose of this study. So at a high level, this study, it aims to provide a strategic vision for interconnected statewide transit network that includes improving and expanding the busing family services, adding passenger rail services, and fostering connections with intercity, regional, and local transit and mobility providers, with this study informing CDOT's transit planning and investment decision for the next decade. Next slide, please. And so in starting with this study, and really looking at it from that perspective of, what are we doing at the state level around busing, and then the upcoming mountain rail projects, and moving forward, what does that look like in helping to build a statewide transit network in both the efforts that we're doing and connecting with all of the great work that folks are doing around the state at local, regional, intercity levels. And so in this, the TCS envisioning a future where Colorado statewide network is comprehensive. So those pieces integrated, so connecting those different pieces and all the work that's already been done around those, integrating our services and what we're doing with a lot of the existing work and future work, and transit across the state, a system that's accessible and equitable. So looking broadly at transit needs and where transit doesn't exist, and ensuring that there's access and that those transit services are equitably dispersed. Sustainable. So I think this bullet, we've really focusing on financial sustainability. So the future of transit and those pieces and what that looks like, but additionally, of course, environmental sustainability as well. Reliability. So this one is important. Oftentimes on a map, for instance, in using busing, it looks very well spread, but when you dig into the frequency of service, there's gaps around the states, and so reliability is a big piece of this when you talk about connections and making sure that the system is reliable for folks to use, and fostering strategic growth. So with ongoing efforts, related to connecting land use and transit and transportation, using something like this to help in moving forward those efforts, in how we best utilize those two things, and connecting them. And so next slide. And so for the overview, so the process, we've already just wrapped up our review of existing statewide network, so we called the current state of transit. And so this effort was really looking at what does everything look like now? So the snapshot of transit throughout the state. So local, regional, intercity providers, as well as existing passenger rail, future passenger rail, and our state-supported transit. And then next is in the process we're currently in is our gaps analysis. So identifying network gaps, service needs, and existing connections between intercity, regional, and local services. And so, this is really two parts. So the first part is really a statewide gaps and needs. So, looking at a statewide level, where are those gaps and needs across the state, where there's currently not transit, or opportunities for transit. And that moves us to our recommendations, which is opportunities to fill gaps and connect state-supported services with intercity, regional, and local providers. And the other part of this too is expanding and improving the busing family services and connections to front range passenger rail and mountain rail. And so the outcomes that we're achieving through this study is one, baseline data. And so this is where we hope to provide information that can be utilized for organizations across the state in regards to transit for gaps and needs. So thinking about this like a heat map, where those gaps and needs are, and helping inform a lot of the work that folks are already doing on the ground in regards to connecting transit and filling gaps and needs in service. And then a transit priority framework. So in looking at these different gaps and needs, how those are prioritized, and creating a weighted system in the ways in which we prioritize filling those gaps and needs across the state. And then the big piece is really what we can control here at the state level. And so, that's integrating state supported services into the statewide transit network. So a lot of folks across the state already work with Bustang and Outrider in connecting their services and identifying connections to their services with Bustang. And then, of course, with the future of Mountain Rail, Front Range Passenger Rail, how do we also connect those services to services across the state? And so the big piece here and the immediate planning future is service expansion, optimization of the Bustang family of services. Next slide. And so for time's sake, going through this quickly, this is really just, one of the outcomes of our existing conditions was really collecting and looking at data of transit across the state. And so this is just an example of, here's the state supported services identified for fixed route. On the next slide, please. And then this is just an example, but also mapping out fixed route transportation as it exists. So in line with Bustang and future passenger rail efforts. And so this is an example. Also, demand response is a critical part of that, and agencies that are providing those services, and lots of other data, schedules, fares, Amtrak and passenger rail, and those things that have also gone into this. But this just as a piece of the current state of transit. Next slide. And then as I talked about, but in summary, wrapping up the major project elements. So the current state of transit really being that existing conditions. Outreach is continuous. So, outreach and really started off with gathering with key agencies, planning information for the gaps analysis, reviewing those pieces, and then coming back to partners throughout the state and sharing what we found in the gaps analysis to help build and inform our recommendations. And as I mentioned, the gaps analysis is underway. That's an ongoing effort that we're hoping to complete in early 2025. And then upcoming is recommendations. So those pieces I talked about, the priority framework and the final report, the transit connection story map, and then next steps for Bustang service expansion and optimization. Next slide. And that is what I have today. So happy to take questions. I appreciate your all's time and for letting me come and share what the work we're doing over at DTR.
Great. Thank you, George. That was a really helpful overview. We've been hearing about it, but I don't know that we've had as good of a comprehensive explanation of what it is and what you're really looking for when you talk to this agency. So thank you again for doing that. So let me open the floor to see if there's questions or comments for George. I'm seeing some negative head nods in here. No questions on this side. Anybody online that would like to chat with George about the TSC or the TCS? I know, I really have to watch that. All right. Well, thank you again, George. So it looks like there's no comments for you today, but we greatly appreciate you joining us and giving us that comprehensive overview. I think the one thing that people might not realize, and George, maybe you do want to comment on this if you're able, that this is an important piece too that could be used in the future as we look at some of the new transit funding that could become available in the state. So this is an important piece, not only filling in a gap and understanding what we're missing in transit, it's filling in a planning gap that can really help inform how we invest dollars in the future. And if I got that wrong, George, please feel free to correct me.
No, you got that right. And I would just add to that as well. Yeah, first, thanks for bringing that up. And also, yeah, this isn't this effort. This study is, there's not dollars attached to it. So, we also recognize there's a lot of, the 10-year plan, the statewide transportation plan updates, the regional planning updates, both, with TPRs across the state. And so, we recognize those things are happening concurrently, and that those are informing a lot of transit project decisions now. But really, we're hoping with the data we collect here offers another perspective and additional information to share in the ways in which we evaluate transit and transit projects into the future, and helping to inform decision making and planning and funding around transit. So thanks for that.
Great. Thank you again, George.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We already covered item 7B, so we're going to talk about item 7C. So I'm going to turn this over to PPACG staff.
Yes, thank you. Jess Bechtel, PPACG. So this item is just a quick reminder. We wanted to keep it in front of you. Next month, we're going to be looking for action from TAC as we near the end of the year. You guys are going to be needing new officers. So Gail will be terming out and we'll be needing new person to take the reins and lead this. So if you have someone in mind, if you have a plan in place, let us know, but that's coming next month for action. So just a quick reminder of that and open for comment if anybody has any.
And if you could remind us who the first and second vice chair are currently.
Currently, Victoria Chavez is the first vice chair, and our second vice chair is actually no longer active on the TAC.
So that's what I had heard. So I wanted to make sure it's clear that we are going to be looking for some new folks to step into the leadership positions. For those who are new to this role, I just want to share with you, we typically try to make sure that another community besides the city or county have one of the leadership roles. So if you are from one of our other jurisdictions in the area, we are going to be looking for somebody to step into at least the second vice chair role to come and serve in that position. So please give that some serious thought. If you would like to give me a call or to send me a message, I'd be happy to talk you through it. It's very minimal work outside of this. In fact, it's really reviewing an email with an agenda that whoever the chair is normally has it reviewed beforehand. And unless somebody has changed their mind, I may have persuaded somebody to at least be willing to be the chair for next year. And I would tell you that I would also be willing to sit in the first or second vice chair. So, but that being said, anyone is welcome to throw their name in the hat. We just want to make sure that we know that we're willing to step up if that's what the TAC decides, but we are going to be looking for someone new to also step in and to start learning the ropes in this leadership. Any questions, comments, or you can just beat me out in the parking lot, whatever, about this topic. All right. We're going to move on to item 7D, LRTP updates.
Thank you. So we have our standing agenda item here for the long-range transportation plan update. However, there are some significant things I want to just chat about a little bit and see if there's any questions at this point. For everybody's awareness, I know we talked a little bit about the greenhouse gas modeling last month and the possibility that we may not make our January anticipated deadline for the LRTP. We have since then received some guidance from CDOT that allows us to move forward in that greenhouse gas modeling process. And we are working to kind of mitigate any implications to that LRTP timeline. To that end, we are starting to bring some of those chapters of the document forward to our committees for review. In the meeting materials this month, there is a link to chapters 1 through 5 of that draft document. I also anticipate updating or including in that link chapter 6 shortly so that it is all available for you all to please review. Let us know if you have comments. Let us know if you have questions. The hope is that if we bring some of these things to you as early as we can, that we can get some of the issues taken care of before we get down the road to the public comment period and the ultimate adoption. So there is time. But we will be taking these through all of the committees. So if you do have anything that is critical that you'd like to see changed before we take it to the board, we will have this on the board agenda for next month. So again, happy to take any questions. If you'd like to reach out to me and have a conversation separately, I'm happy to do that as well. John would like to mention right now, I think with the timeline, and we did actually have a conversation earlier today with some CDOT folks regarding the Transportation Commission schedule and some of that. I think right now we're targeting the February 12th board meeting as the final adoption date, provided everything goes according to the schedule we have laid out right now.
So again, and again, pardon me for jumping in to know. So that means that at the end of January, we will have a non-conforming plan. So if you're planning to go to bid for any project that might need to be altered in any way and go through a TIP amendment sometime in February, you might want to make sure you have an amendment done beforehand. February 12th is our sort of like if everything falls. So we are trying to mitigate it as best we can, but there are other folks have control of the schedule. So if everything falls the way we would like it to fall, looks like February 12th is sort of the best that we're going to be able to do. If they don't fall that way, then it looks like we may begin to March. So I just wanted to make sure we told you all of that, gave you plenty of heads up. It is unfortunate that we're going to end up with a non-conforming plan, but I don't see how we're going to be able to avoid it because some of the folks in Denver don't have to necessarily go as fast as I'd like them to go. So that's just the way it is. And we'll live with that. So again, hopefully anybody that this would impact can get us a TIP amendment in and we can process it before our plan becomes non-compliant.
Thank you, I think.
Well, I take any and all criticisms, right? I mean, in a perfect world, we would never have a non-conforming plan. It's the first time I've had one in my 20+ year career, but
we understand where we are. So I have somewhat a city-specific question, or maybe two. One is, well, I guess it's comment. We would like to touch bases with you on one item to make sure we don't have to do an amendment on a funding piece for Mountain Metro. And then I know we have submitted, the City of Colorado Springs has submitted some other TIP amendments. I think, are they all administrative and done?
Yeah.
So we don't have to do anything else. Okay. Anyone else have any TIP amendment questions, knowing that we are getting close to the end of the year? So if there's something that needs to be done, it would have to be done rather quickly since there are only 2 more meetings left. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. The TIP updates, I guess, any more TIP updates than what we just discussed?
Yes, so perfect segue. So again, Jess Bechtel, TIP updates. So bouncing off of what Gail just said, we are going to have the jurisdictional project status meetings here in about 2 weeks for TIP projects. Those are scheduled for all of the larger jurisdictions. There's a couple of you out there that we still need to reach out and make sure we touch base on your projects. But with those, we're going to be looking for a little more detail than we have in the past, just to make sure we're really going through this. It's been a little bit since we've met, and so we'd really like to know where we're at with these projects, how we can help, where the funding is. There's some funding like ARPA that's coming up that has deadlines and things like that. So we just want to make sure we're staying on it with you guys. And so next week, I'm going to send out a spreadsheet to each of the jurisdictions with their tipped projects of where they stand. And then that hopefully will help you. If you do have any amendments you want to make, we can handle those in November right away to make sure that everything's in that you want in, everything is clear how you think it should be in the tip, and we'll go from there. And then on the other side of that, we will have a little bit of extra funding that we need to program soon. So we're looking at how we'll do that on the other side as well, once we have solid updates on where we're at with everything in the tip currently. So that's the update.
Okay, great. When you send out that spreadsheet, Jess, would you please maybe send out the top 3 to 5 questions you want to make sure each of these project managers are coming?
Certainly, I have that here. So, and again, it's nothing crazy or anything new. It's just, we just want to know where it's at in the process. If there's going to be cost overruns or underruns, if it's, where it's at in its schedule, funding, things like that, if, how we can help. So nothing crazy, but I'll send all of that out. I'll make sure it's clear.
Okay, remind me afterwards when we talk about Matt Metra's tip question. I heard on one of my projects, I'll have tap money that needs to be returned and reprogrammed.
Ah, okay. Sounds
Just
good.
project costs less than we thought. I know that doesn't happen often. I know it doesn't happen often. I know everyone, I'll fight you all off for it. I already have a spot for it. Anyway, no, okay.
That sounds
Great.
good. We have a little bit of extra funding, as I said, coming that we need to program out. So
Okay,
we'll
perfect.
do it all at once. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, we're gonna go ahead on item 7F. CDOT updates, and I'm gonna look for the two folks from CDOT that are currently in the room first and then go online. So Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just hashing it out with Kathleen from headquarters to see who goes first.
I know you guys usually have to pick and choose who's gonna cover which item.
So I don't have many. Do fire away with any questions if I've forgotten something and somebody in the room has any questions. That being said, let me go back to this email. I received an email just this afternoon from CASTA, the Colorado Association of Transit Agencies. Next week on the 23rd, CASTA is hosting an in-person workshop for planners, transit agency reps, and other stakeholders. This workshop is being held to exchange ideas, examine and identify gaps and needs, and the purpose of this is for Front Range passenger rail station area planning. Discuss how to proactively plan for meaningful multimodal connections to Front Range passenger rail stations, and understand how to unite different interests in the planning process to leverage the benefits of passenger rail. I will happily forward this along to PPACG staff to then redistribute if there is interest. The in-person location is on the Aurora campus up in Denver. There's a $15 fee to cover the provided lunch. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on October 23rd. And it says at the end of this, who should attend? Municipal land use, transportation, and transit planners, transit agency personnel, mobility managers, and elected officials. Just wanted to get that out because Front Range passenger rail is in our future, with my fingers crossed. And then otherwise, Region 2 staff is very, very deep in the middle of our 2050 statewide plan update with all of our rural TPRs. And so I am encouraged to hear the updates, at least from PPACG staff in your MPO plan update. And that is all I have from Region 2, unless Lindsay or Scott have anything.
Lindsay? Nothing?
No,
Nothing here.
I just want to thank Jess again for all of the work that she's been doing on the tip and everything. It's been amazing. So other than that, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Great, appreciate that. And Scott, I think I heard you say nothing from you right now.
Correct. Yes, nothing at the moment.
All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Kathleen to see if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Hi, this is Kathleen.
Okay.
There is.
Kathleen, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. It's very faint.
Oh. Let's see. I'm gonna take off the headset. Can you hear me now?
Yes, success.
Okay, so there is a new transportation commissioner for District 11, which is northeastern Colorado. His name is Todd Masters, and he's from the town of Elizabeth. So that's news from HQTC. Also, you already know we're working on our 2050 statewide plan and conducting meetings around the state for that effort. And then also, our environmental programs branch is having a big meeting of CDOT staff. It's not open to the public, but we're all convening in Trinidad on the 23rd, which is the same date that Jeff was mentioning for another event. And it brought that to my mind, but it's nice that CDOT staff is coming together to meet face to face across the state, environmental programs folks along with region staff. And so I'm looking forward to that. And there's no other major TC reports, budget amendments and different expenditure amounts were approved at the Transportation Commission today. And that was all that was on the agenda. But next month, we will have the TPR boundary discussion with the TC. So stay tuned for that one, or jump on if you want to listen in. So that's all I have from HQ.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. John, anything else you want to add from Region 2?
No, I don't have anything unless maybe perhaps somebody has a question for me on the road projects or anything. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thanks, John. Lachelle, anything from the LPA? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Lachelle.
Just a reminder that off-system bridge applications and safe routes to school applications are coming up in the next couple of weeks, deadlines.
Okay. Great, Lachelle. And when you come for our TIP update meeting, I assume you and Junior and maybe some others from your staff are going to be there in person. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have it on our calendar. We can be there in person. That's no problem. Sure.
Oh, I'm just wondering, because if you're there, I'd like to run a concept by you, but it's easier to do with having some exhibits. And I would like your opinion on a feature of a project.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anything else for CDOT staff? Otherwise, oh yes, John. You
So I would put this under a CDOT item. At the last stack meeting, for the first time in 20 years, they have a new chair. Vince from Gunnison Valley has moved aside. Gary Beatty, who was a former transportation commissioner, is the new chair, and our very own Holly Williams is the vice chair. So if there is something on stack that you'd like to make sure you touch base with Holly on, like I said, she's now the vice chair. So wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Great. Thank you, John. Anything else on that? Otherwise, we'll move on to item 7G, IIJA updates.
There is a memo in your packet with all of the funding opportunities from the IIJA, the DOT's tracker, as well as a couple of state opportunities. Lachelle already mentioned Safe Routes to School, which is due in November. That's one that we kind of wanted to bring to your attention. Also, if you're tracking the Protect grant, that is anticipated to be released for applications shortly.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to items 8 and 9 to see if there are any member entity announcements or suggestions for future TAC items. So I'm going to start with those in the room first. Allison, anything? I don't have anything. Jacob?
Don't know if this is the best place to put this out here, but it's important, I think, to note. So kind of a sobering day on Monday, if you guys kind of paid attention. I'm not sure how much of it really got out there, but we had a driver that had passed out at the wheel, and the driver passed out the wheel, and a passenger actually took control of the bus and was able to come to a safe stop with it. So we're very appreciative for the passenger doing that. We're trying to find ways we can reward the individual, but on the unfortunate side of things, the driver that had passed out would later pass away from what had occurred. So pretty sobering day on Monday. Just to figure I'd throw that out there. So we're seeing how we can, like I said, how we can show a little bit of appreciation to this passenger that potentially saved additional lives.
Anything, Darren? All right. Anybody online that would like to make an announcement or suggestion for a future TAC item? I don't see anybody scrambling to unmute. So if you have anything else, please send an email to the PPACG staff or myself, and we'll get that added to the agenda. Otherwise, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for your time today.